The South African Students' Solidarity Foundation for Education remains concerned that strong matric outcomes do not translate into equitable access to higher education. Each year, thousands of academically deserving learners encounter systematic barriers as they seek to transition into the post-school education and training system due to limited institutional capacity, financial exclusions, accommodation shortages, and insufficient student support systems. To take this discussion a bit more further, we are now joined by manager at SASSFE Sthandiwe Msomi, and she joins us now via our video link. Ms. Msomi, thank you so much for your time this evening here on SABC News. I mean, let's start off here, as we will be discussing a bit further in terms of the available access for various matriculants post-matric. What are your thoughts and your reaction in terms of how well the class of 2025 did this year?
Yeah, thank you so much for having us on the show this evening. The class of 2025 does have to be congratulated. I think the pass rate continues to increase each and every single year, and 88% pass rate is really, really impressive. And it shows that the investments that are being made into basic education are indeed paying off. But I think for us as SASSFE, our concern is that the success in the basic education system doesn't address the structural issues that young people often face when they move from basic education into higher education. And those issues range from things like access to the post-school and education sector. It ranges to even equity and equality of the experiences of students who are able to get into these higher education institutions. And so if you look at our statements, it's not only just about access in terms of funding through SASSFE or bursaries or scholarships, but even once students are inside of campuses, largely those who come from poor and working class households, things like campus hunger and not having accommodation and sleeping in libraries and bathrooms become such a big issue that results in universities not being able to even retain a lot of young, talented students who just don't have the means to get through the day-to-day living that comes with being in a university space. And so you're dealing with that pool of people who potentially would not be able to complete their qualifications. And it's unfortunate because we do live in an economy where those who do have university degrees have a higher likelihood of being able to reap the rewards of being employed in high-skilled sectors that have larger premiums on wages. And so it becomes almost a cyclical cycle where those who start from the bottom are often truncated with the biggest challenges in navigating the higher education sector. And so while we are celebrating the matric pass rates, we do need to have honest conversations about what we do to ensure that those young people are able to move through the system and make it out with a qualification and also with the capacity to enter the working economy and broader sectors.
And Ms. Msomi, when it comes to some of these concerns that you have raised, I mean, how concerning is this, particularly for those who just come straight from, high school? I mean, it also reminds me of the issue of the missing middle and how some students are not able to cope once they get into the higher education sector.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's an important conversation because access doesn't always equal quality, right? And so even though access to basic education has increased over the years, we need to have a conversation about whether poor and working class students have access to the different technologies that assist in being able to cope with living in a modernized economy such as South Africa. And so when you do have a gap between the have and the have-nots, those ultimately manifest themselves in even more pronounced ways when someone enters the tertiary education sector. And so those are issues that we should be looking into. And even at the issue with the missing middle, SASSFE is quite concerned about the fact that a sustainable solution hasn't been really found for the missing middle. We know that NSFAS has created a loan scheme where missing middle students can take up a loan, and that could be used to finance their studies. But there needs to be conversations about whether students who do come from that background have the requisite knowledge on how to take on debt and manage debt? And even when they make it out of the tertiary education sector, will they have access immediately to a job that gives them the resources to pay off that loan and be able to pass it over to the next generation of students that might be able to take up such a facility? And those sort of mindset shifts, but also structural shifts, should be happening right from a community level, right from a basic education level, as opposed to thrusting it on a student when they enter higher education and are now going to navigate taking up different loans, etc. And those again go back to issues of access and equity when one enters the higher education sector.
And as SASSFE, have you reached out to the education sector to try and ventilate some of these issues facing students?
Yeah, so SASSFE operates as a network of alumni, primarily of former student leaders. So it was created around 2016 when the Fees Must Fall movement was at its height, and leaders, particularly at Wits University, ranging from leaders such as Dalimpofu, the late Sthandiwe Msom, Kenneth Creamers, etc., got together and created a fund where former student leaders and former students who are in the working world, either through entrepreneurship or through employment, would give back and donate a monthly amount into the fund that would be used then to support student.
It seems as if we have... All right. So I'll just allow you to finish your thought. We had lost you there for a moment.
Oh, okay, no, sorry about that. But I was just saying that the SASSFE movement was formed off of former student leaders, believing that it's important to be able to give back to the next generation of students in the higher education system. And so we as an organization are incredibly passionate about mobilizing former student leaders who are now in a position to give back, to donate an amount, whether it's 100 Rand or 200 Rand every month to SASSFE, and through partnerships with universities. At the moment, we do have one with Wits University. As and when the need arises, we're able to fund SRC campaigns or fund food banks on campuses to ensure that students have access to things like meals or assistance with paying off student debt. And then so for us, it's important to not just talk about these issues, but to also put our money where our mouth is, essentially, and be able to give back. But at a higher, more policy-making level, as SASSFE, we are definitely engaging with NSFAS, particularly on the missing middle issue, to look at how to mobilize students around it and get more students who could be eligible for instruments of this nature to know about it, and how to make it more student friendly, and continuous engagement as well with DHET to ensure that the higher education sector is one that is actually accessible to students, not just with the idea of it, but also with the day-to-day engagement with the possibilities.
All right, Mr. Msomi, thank you so much for your time and for that insight. That's a manager at SASSFE Sthandiwe Msomi there, just talking to us about the various barriers that face particularly first-year students who come from high school and get straight into university, and the barriers that they are faced with once they get a tertiary education.